After you are spiritually awakened, you may think that your ego has died or is gone forever. But as long as you are human and you have this mind that keeps defining who you are, you can't really get rid of your ego. What happened though is after spiritual awakening, your ego knows that the old identity no longer works anymore. It can't repeat the same old story because you won't believe it. So in order for it to survive, it has to create a new identity, one that is more subtle and not as easily detectable. And what better way to create an identity than to use what you have learned about spirituality? And so we end up having this new identity, commonly known as the spiritual ego. In this video, I'm going to talk about the 5 subtle and hidden ego traps that we need to be aware of so that we don't get tricked by our ego, leading us to a path that is undesirable and disconnected from who we really are. Trap number 1. You think you have to get rid of your ego, or even worse, you think that you have gotten rid of your ego and now you are very spiritual. When we are spiritually awakened and we have a taste of the spiritual realm, like the joy, the peace, the love, and the bliss, and we start to understand how our ego has caused us to suffer, we may think that our ego is bad or negative. But when we try to get rid of the ego, we also get stuck in this duality, like this is good, that is evil, this is spiritual, that is unspiritual. From the spiritual perspective, the ego actually serves a spiritual purpose in our expansion and development. Whenever we experience contrast caused by the ego, we are also given this opportunity to experience our spiritual self in a much deeper manner. When you are in darkness, the light within you will shine brighter than as compared when you are in a broad daylight. When we talk about transcending our ego, we're not talking about killing the ego. We're talking about coexisting and working with the ego. It's about accepting the ego as part of our human experience. And when you're open to that aspect of yourself, your ego would be less likely to do things behind your back without your knowing, or in a covert manner. It's just like how I used to be a tutor. My student would tell me things that they won't tell their parents. They will express what they truly feel. They will tell me what they have done without their parents knowing. That's because I'm non-judgmental. I don't tell them off, and I'm open to listening to what they have done. I at most give them my perspective of things, but I wouldn't force them to adopt what I've shared. They don't tell their parents because they are afraid of getting scolded. When you are open to listening to your children, they won't hide things from you. But when you're judgmental and critical, they may still do what you tell them to do. However, they may also do things behind your back without you knowing. This is the same as the ego. When you try to get rid of the ego, it goes undercover. When an identity doesn't work anymore, the ego just lowers its visibility and forms another identity. Wherever it's caught, it will just drop one identity for another. You can't really kill or get rid of the ego. When you say you have gotten rid of the ego or your ego, what you're actually saying is you are blind to your own ego. You are unaware of your ego. You need to hide your ego itself from your awareness in order to be spiritual. I feel that this is even worse, as there will be a lot more blind spot you won't see. Just because you don't know what your children are doing doesn't mean that they aren't doing something behind your back. Your ego can trick you or make you believe that it is gone while still controlling you covertly in the background without you knowing. So I feel it's better to openly embrace your ego and see what it's up to than letting it hide in the background and doing subtle things that you don't know. Trap number 2. You fight with other people's ego. This can manifest in many forms. For example, you put people into adversary groups like spiritual people and non-spiritual people, or like spiritual people versus business people. You may think that spiritual people are all about doing good for the humankind, we are compassionate, we are loving, and those business people, they are cutthroat and all about making money. They sell their soul to make money, so they are unhappy and depressed deep down inside. Anytime when you put people in groups like this, you create a sense of separation. You adopt this us versus them mentality. You may even have a superiority complex, thinking that you're better than those others who aren't spiritually awakened yet, thinking that you're more advanced and know something that they don't know, thinking that you are here to save the world. Alternatively, you may adopt a victim mentality, like you think that a small group of people are controlling you or dominating the world. They're going to cause chaos, they're going to ruin the world. They create this system and make our lives miserable and restrict our freedom. Whenever you put people in groups like this, or you attack someone else's ego, know that your own ego is also activated. Your spirit doesn't attack your ego, it doesn't attack other people's ego. Your spirit knows the more you attack or resist something, the greater the momentum is, the greater the separation is. An individual egoic identity can create a lot of pain and suffering to oneself, but a collective egoic identity, when a group of people come together and believe they are a more superior group than another, and think that the other group is wrong and attack the other group, this is even worse. The thing is, everyone has a spirit, whether you are spiritually awakened or non-spiritually awakened. When you are spiritually awakened, it just gives you an additional perspective of things. It gives you a new level of awareness. It doesn't mean that you are more advanced or superior than someone who doesn't have this awareness or perspective. And just because there are some system in place that seems very restrictive, doesn't mean that you have to follow it or you have to play along the game that other people has created and do exactly how they want you to play the game. When you are in the spiritual perspective, you are actually tapped into this creative and freedom energy. You always feel like you have a choice and you can creatively decide how you want to play the game or what game you want to play. It's only when you are stuck in the egoic perspective that you feel like a victim, like someone else is dictating your life and you have no choice and no freedom. Trap number 3, you over-intellectualize spirituality and you try to chase enlightenment by gathering more knowledge. So one of the subtle things that the spiritual ego does is it tries to build its identity by accumulating more spiritual knowledge. Reading a lot of books or quoting teachings and mantras from famous authors or ancient texts doesn't make you more spiritually enlightened. This is just regurgitation of what other people has already expressed. You may understand the teachings from a mental perspective as a mental concept, but you may not have fully understand what the teachings means from a deeper spiritual level. You may not have experienced it yourself, and you're just using these mantras or these quotes like a dogmatic belief. So and so said this, and that's why you have to do what they have said. If you truly understand the teachings from a deeper spiritual level, you will be able to express it in many different forms or in your own words. It can be applied to different circumstances and situations, and it won't be just a word-to-word memorization or regurgitation of the mantra. Instead, it would be a creation or a recreation, which your spirit is very capable of doing. And when we over-intellectualize spirituality, we keep seeking the truth from teachers and from books. We want to understand it from a conceptual level, but this understanding is more mental than spiritual. We may end up getting stuck because spirituality is not a mental concept, it's not logical, it's not black and white, it's kind of gray, it's kind of subjective. It depends on your personal experience, and sometimes it's difficult for an analytical mind to grasp something so all-encompassing like spirituality. Let's say if someone experiences something like they communicate with their angels and spirit guides, and you haven't experienced it yourself, you can't say that someone is wrong. Just because you haven't experienced it yourself yet doesn't mean that the other party is wrong. When you try to find the truth, you fall into this ego trap of duality again. This is a truth. That is an illusion. I'm right and you are wrong. You start to have this need to be right all the time, and you try to define everything in a very black and white manner. If what you believe is the truth, then others who have a different point of view must be wrong. Others will have to be wrong in order for you to be right. This dogmatic belief about spirituality isn't what spirituality is really about. All the answers you are seeking are already within you. When you hear someone say something that resonates deeply within you, then that is the truth. That is your truth. But we have to be very careful here. We don't want to say that I need to do something in order to be spiritual. When we associate the thing that we have to do with spirituality, for example, I need to meditate, I need to practice breath work, I need to do shadow work or yoga. Know that this is only your truth, your version of spirituality. But your version of spirituality might not be another person's version of spirituality. There are many different representations of spirituality. Not all spiritual teachers will speak like Eckhart Tolle or Thich Nhat Hanh, for example. When I first started this channel, this YouTube channel, I was like, I don't really sound very spiritual. I'm not as calm and composed as some of the spiritual teachers I've seen. I could be a little bit dramatic and excited, but I then quickly realized that it's my ego trying to define what a spiritual person should be or should not be, and it's trying to control me. So I just let go of this belief of what a spiritual person has to be and just be myself and speak in a way that I normally speak. Spirituality can be expressed differently with our own human flavor. And there are many different types of spirituality and different paths you can take. You have to be careful when your ego limits spirituality to one representation. This also applies to things that we restrict ourselves from doing, the things that we think are unspiritual. For example, like you cannot listen to pop music or watch movies or eat junk food or enjoy expensive products. Like these things are unspiritual. Yes, some of these things may have very low vibration and they may affect your vibration too, but your perception of these things is even worse than the thing itself. Like when you feel guilty or ashamed of yourself, rather than enjoying or appreciate these things, you're making it worse for yourself. You're pulling yourself away from the direction of spirituality. Trap number 4. You bypass your emotions and you cover up with excessive positivity, or what most people know as toxic positivity. First of all, I think positivity is a great thing. It uplifts people, it gives us hope, and it's an energy that's very close to the spirit. However, when we use positivity to cover out or deny our own emotion, that's the issue. That is spiritual bypassing. It's very similar to the previous point. When we have this belief that our emotions are not spiritual, are not us, I need to be positive all the time in order to be spiritual. This is not going to work in the long run. We're just using the teachings from spiritual teacher and using it in a very unhelpful manner. We use the mantra that we hear from our spiritual teacher and we form it into a belief. Like for example, teachings such as all is well and I see good in everything and everyone. These are actually very great teachings and they resonate with my own spiritual perception. Nothing wrong with them. But if we are like, we have to see good in everything, we need to pretend that all is well when we are not, or we are not our thoughts, our body, because that is what we are taught. So we deny our own thoughts and body. Then you're not really respecting yourself as a human. As a human, we have an ego, we have thoughts, we have emotion, we have a body. And then we also have a spirit. Your ego and your spirit may not share the same perspective at every given moment in time. And that's okay. We don't always have to align with our spirit. And when we are not aligned with our spirit, that's when we feel negative emotion. Our emotion are actually indicators of how aligned we are to our spirit. The irony here is being aware of this deviation actually help us to move towards the spiritual perspective. It helps us to see that we have some belief that are not serving us or blocking us from reaching our full potential. And we may start to drop this belief so that we can move closer to the spiritual perspective. But when you see that you're here, you're spiritual, and you are actually here, there's a deviation, but you kind of deny this part of yourself. You're not going to see it. You deny the ego. Where you are actually at is still here, not here. And because you don't have this awareness of this deviation, you also don't see a need to move toward this spiritual perspective. Trap number 5. You dig too deep into your own wounds. The flip side of spiritual bypassing is also not very desirable. The ego is very tricky. When you're negative, the ego may make you think that positive is very spiritual, is the way to go. But when you're very positive, your ego may think that, hey, you're not examining your own wounds, you're not healing your traumas, so you need to go to the negative. Like shadow works help us to develop self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-compassion. However, the problem with shadow work is we may be too carried away by our own emotions. We may be overwhelmed by shame, anger, and fear. So much so that we end up stuck in depression or a dark night of the soul. When it comes to shadow work, I feel that you want to do whatever is necessary to help you live your life with ease. But you don't want to keep digging and digging for problems as though there's something wrong with you that needs to be fixed. This is your ego tricking you, making you feel that you're imperfect and that you need to keep striving for this elusive perfection called spiritual enlightenment. Can you see that this is just another form of belief? Like, I need to heal all my wounds in order to be spiritual. Whenever you say that I need to blank in order to be spiritual, you're falling into your ego's trap. Also, most of our problems are created by our egoic mind. Our ego creates a problem for us to jump into, for us to solve, and then when we climb out of the problem, feeling like we are one step closer to spiritual enlightenment, we are actually back in the beginning, back to where we started. Wouldn't it be better if we just stop digging holes and problems for us to jump into and then climb out again? You actually don't have to look for problems, because when it's time for you to look at your shadowy side of yourself, it will naturally arise for you to integrate into your life. When you realize that you are stuck at a certain part of your life, or when you are procrastinating in doing something, or you keep feeling down, like you're stuck in a negative vibe, it's already showing you that, hey, there's some resistance or some limiting belief that you need to let go of. There will be a cue or a sign to ask you to look deeper into yourself, into your shadows. You don't have to dig for them in your past experiences or your traumas. Some of the things that you are digging may not even be accurate. Your memory of the past are mostly a recreation of your past. They have been repressed for so long, you may not be able to recall all the details. Furthermore, even though healing our past wound can help us to expand to the best version of ourselves, this expansion is endless. After you resolve your current life trauma, the universe will bring you your past life trauma. It's a never-ending process. It's a never-ending expansion and evolution. You will only be fully aligned to the spirit or be spiritually enlightened when you're dead, when you're passed on. When you leave the physical dimension behind and re-emerge with the spiritual dimension completely, that is where you are fully spiritually enlightened. Instead of striving for perfection or trying to heal everything all at once, just take it as it comes. If nothing surfaces at this moment, it means that either you're not ready for a bigger expansion or it's not the time for you to do so. Spiritual development is not linear. Sometimes you get a lot to hear and sometimes you don't. So stop dwelling so much about what you need to change or what you need to do or improve. Take it as it comes. After we are spiritually awakened, we get a taste of heaven and bliss, and we may think that this is what we need to achieve or this is what we need to experience for the rest of our life. However, we may still get triggered by others from time to time. Watch this next video to find out more.